Hello, everybody. I'm Vasudha Venugopal, and I'm coming to you live from the NDTV newsroom. And today we're going to talk about something which has been on our minds for a long time now: the Delhi air quality. And to talk about this, we have Mr. Ronak Sutaria. He is the CEO and the founder of Respiring Living Sciences. He's also a climate activist and someone I remember has been raising the issue of air pollution for a while now. He's been talking about how technology can help us assess air pollution in finer ways. Somebody who has been talking about hyperlocal ways of dealing with the situation. Mr. Sutaria, thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, Vasudha. Hi.
So, Mr. Sutaria, I don't follow this completely because AQI and CAQM, these are such intimidating terms. But of course, pollution is something that is affecting all of us. I am a mother and I have a 4-year-old, and I'm really worried that my child is not able to go to school. He's not able to go out to play. So tell us, when you have an AQI of 400 plus, which is almost 4 times more than what is satisfactory, how urgent is the situation? Is this a health epidemic that we are in?
So, I think the situation, of course, in Delhi is currently beyond severe. I think everything, we are tracking this across 40 locations. That is the government's network. And every single location is reporting levels which are above 250 micrograms. And like you said, the AQI of 400 actually translates to the different pollutant levels of PM 2.5, PM 10. There are other gases also like NO2, ozone, and carbon monoxide. Each of these are reporting close to 20 times the safe limits set by the government itself. The global standards are, of course, at close to 8 and 10 micrograms. But the national standards are about between 40 and 60 micrograms, and a level of 300 to 350 is beyond severe. What that translates to, and you yourself said that you have a child at home. I think the of course outdoors is terrible. There's no question about it. Early mornings are the worst. They are the absolute worst. And I was watching somewhere some cricket matches are still going on. There is some outdoor sports which there should be an absolute until 11 o'clock. I think outdoor activities are an extremely hazardous activity to do. I think but indoors some level of protection can be done. So at this stage, for those who can protect themselves, they should try and keep windows closed. They should try and keep as much possible. This is a reminiscent of COVID days. We will have to
Absolutely.
protect ourselves. uh, Having said that, while citizens can do only so much in terms of protecting themselves, I think the governance framework is, you know unfortunately, still a large part of it is doing things which are, you know just the visual effects of things like spraying water and
Yeah.
stuff, which is not helping the situation.
But Mrs.
um,
Taria, this other thing that, this odd even, something that the government talked about yesterday, and today, of course, Supreme Court had the choicest things to say. Like, we all agree with what the Supreme Court said. It can't be a political battle. Some of these moves have been just for optics. When you talk specifically about the odd even scheme, which is a flagship scheme of the Delhi government, it was introduced in 2016. It restricts four-wheelers, but it doesn't have limitations on two-wheelers, and many other exemptions are also there. Has it really worked? Because there are mixed views, and many experts seem to believe that because the matter has certain urgency to this, any little thing will also be of use. But what does data say on the effectiveness of odd even as a scheme to curb Delhi's air pollution?
I think there it is fairly unequivocal that the odd even had not worked last time. I think there is published reports from IIT Kanpur that odd even had not, it was less than 10% the change in the air pollution levels, and that was not enough to attribute it to the odd even of the 2016. We'll remember Jan 2016 when the
Yes.
first time odd even was done. The science and the data did not back that policy rollout. And I'm, frankly, even this time, the odd even is too little too late. And other than just the optics, like you said, it does not, the inconvenience that it causes does not offset the benefits that are going to be gained from it.
Right.
um, Fundamentally, the burning of coal, the burning of solid fuel, the biomass, not only in the stubble region, but there is biomass burning that is going to happen in the colder months, across the city. And those are policy level implementations which have not been implemented. So effectively, I think things have fallen through the cracks, between the city, there's the center and the state, and with all kinds of governance issues that unfortunately that the Delhi experiences.
Right. Mrs. Sutaria, how so is it right to say that stubble burning by the farmers is the most prominent reason for Delhi's air quality index being so bad? Or construction dust and vehicular emissions, like we talked about, these are also important figures. Can you tell us? Can you break this down for us? How bad is the stubble burning scene, and how bad are the other factors?
I think stubble turning is an extremely, localized, not localized, it is an extremely, from a time perspective, it is limited to these 10 days when the peak of the fire counts, goes up. It's these 10 days of November that every year it happens. And largely, I would say that yes, it of course contributes, and most of the studies, from all the IITs have shown that in the peak stubble burning season, it goes up to about 30 to 40%. The effects of PM 2.5 seen in Delhi is from the stubble burning, so it cannot be ignored. But having said that, it is a 10-day phenomena. So the year-round challenge faced by the city, cannot be attributed to what's happening in Punjab and Haryana. The year-round activities comes back to the situation, the level of burning that Delhi experiences, both at the domestic level, at the industrial level, and at the city level. So I think there is these essential factors. But the vehicular one is, I think, I mean, our studies in Bombay are showing that it is reducing actually.
Right.
Interestingly, vehicular pollution in Bombay has declined by about 20-25%.
Right.
And Delhi, of course, the number of vehicles are going up, but the fuel quality has improved over the years. Everything has moved to CNG and electric. So I think vehicular is going to over time place a smaller and smaller role, and the sources from the domestic solid fuel, the industrial waste burning, and there was a study uh, the the Muzaffarpur waste, the paper recycling plants, and that had made headlines in Bloomberg and elsewhere, where a large quantity is found to be plastic. In the, I mean, the prescribed amount is 2%, but what the findings were that more than 10 to 15% is plastic which is being burnt while recycling paper.
Oh.
And these are the aspects where you know the problem becomes quite severe.
Right. So that's very interesting about this vehicular emissions. What about Mumbai, Mrs. Taria? Because this time we saw the air quality in Mumbai also declining, and that could be the geographical conditions of Mumbai are, of course, different from Delhi. And I've read your pieces where you've talked about how Delhi made certain improvements, and what were the reasons for Mumbai's air quality declining this time? Was it to do with the weather?
I think the findings, at least at the data level, is showing that typically Mumbai earlier, at least years ago, used to remain at about 25 to 30 AQI, or at least the PM 2.5 concentration. This year it is touching 100. So we are looking at a three times worsening situation for Mumbai, which is unlike. I mean, even though, just to give you a context, Delhi is at about 350, Mumbai is at about 100, but Mumbai has not experienced these levels for a while.
Right.
So from at least the time that large scale tracking and monitoring has been done. So to answer your question, Mumbai is seeing a 30-35% worsening of the situation, which is alarming for the coastal city. And I think, I mean, while there can be many factors, the construction, the scale of construction in Mumbai is relatively unprecedented.
Right.
So that is definitely playing a role. Um, Yeah.
But what about the cases of stubble burning? Of course, that is a very, very serious concern. But I was looking at interviews of farmers, and most of them were talking about this whole problems with distribution of the baling machines, or some of them were also talking about technologies that they're using with respect to seeding. Surface seeding is what they say. Have these technologies even, taken off, or is it just on paper? Because they talk about stubble burning being handled at a very initial stage, and they're also talking about different kinds of rice being sown in Punjab, which also had flooding earlier this year, and that also being becoming an important factor when it comes to the harvest happening later, but the sowing process happening, sometime in the month of October. So, what are these factors which have also led to stubble burning targets not being met?
Stubble burning is a complicated topic, and honestly, I'm not qualified enough to get into it, because I know that, of course, we've tracked all the policies that are being implemented for stubble burning, and I think it's not a lack of technology. I mean, I think the technology, there are a large number of groups, and we know some of the groups who've been on the ground there now for the last 2 to 3 years. It's not a lack of technology and lack of equipment or lack of funding. um, I think it's a coordination and it's a timing challenge. The scale is just so large that the infrastructure, or the, whatever is the policy level implementations, I think is not matching up to the scale of the problem. So I think the technology is available, but it's not being made it's not being used in a timely way. Getting the parali, or the waste
Yeah,
out in a timely way. I think finally the farmers burn it because they just lose hope in moving it out, and you can't blame them at the end of the day.
right,
It is a tough call, I'm sure. I mean, I have not been over there in a situation, but I'm sure it's not being done out of choice. So
right.
I would not. Yeah, I think that's a topic which is highly nuanced and
Absolutely,
complicated.
sir. I was reading up on the smog towers, and tell us, how do these smog towers work? You've talked about hyperlocal solutions, and there's this report on Lucknow actually doing better than a lot of other cities because they went for hyperlocal solutions. At the same time, I was reading criticism about how there is a lot of investment and basically for data on very just nearby in the neighborhood. So how does one find a balance? And tell us about hyperlocal solutions that you've been suggesting.
So I think effectively, frankly, globally, the direction is that it is possible to track this at a per square kilometer level. And then there is no reason it should not be done. There are no downsides to it. Because the cost is so marginal in the scheme of things, that having accurate information at a per square kilometer level, is something which any decision maker would look for. I mean, when you are reporting and when you want to actually cover a neighborhood, you will try to get as many voices as possible, to remove the biases, because two
Yes.
or three voices can completely bias the situation.
Yes.
And that is what is happening to the air quality spending in India. We are spending 4,000 crores over
Yes.
5 years,
Yes.
and cumulatively 12,000 crores have been attributed to spending on air quality. Now, 12,000 crores is not a small sum. Are there biases being created in terms of where it is being put in? Are the most affected people getting access to the support they need? And the hyperlocal essentially looks at democratizing the access to this kind of support. Because the intention was correct. When you look at the government's intention, it definitely started off with the right spirit. But if you don't have the right tools, I mean, we may have all the best intentions, but if we don't have a means of communicating with each other, the message is not going to get through. And that is what happens when you don't have hyperlocal, and when you have only a handful of locations. Then you're going to basically just spread your money blindly. It's like shooting in the dark,
Right.
and there's no need to shoot in the dark when you have technology available.
Right.
So hyperlocal really is to fine tune your interventions.
So the targets, Mr. Sutaria, are all castles in the air, is it? Like, because I covered the G20 and there was so much talk about climate change and air quality. And of course, we keep hearing about CAQM, and ministers and state ministers also talk about it. What about the targets? Like, are we anywhere? Like, we're just fighting to be in that safe area, which also seems to be so challenging right now.
I would look at all of these, as, frankly, this is a 15-year journey. Honestly, it started 5 years ago. We are on a 15-year journey, and targets are interim, and with anything which is long term, I mean, the example in front of us is Los Angeles, California. They have brought down their levels by 50%, but it took them a decade, and it took them literally, very, very closed monitoring or very, very closed interventions to get to those targets. So I would not discount the need for targets, but at the same time, I would say that they set a particular direction. 30% was a good target to have, because that tells us, where to put the most focus on. And, in Mumbai, all of that money was spent on EVs, which to any scientific and a technical agency would to an extent feel misguided, because
Right.
EV, while it helps, the big sectors were not addressed. Having said that, I think essentially it's important to have these policy guidelines, because they set a direction. The BS6 was a very effective direction,
Okay.
and there have in the past been very effective implementations, and there have been misguided implementations. So effectively, I think that's where we are.
Right. So my last question to you: what is your final advice to policymakers? Because there's a lot of conversation around this. Today we saw Mr. Gopal Rai actually taking a step back and saying that he would like to go through the Supreme Court's observations before implementing anything. And we've heard similar statements, but also this political battle is going on. But I see around me that people are far more sensitive and they want to do their bit. So, what is your final advice to policymakers on countering something so huge like this?
I would say, so that there is parallels available. We can look at cities elsewhere. I mean, and effectively, this needs a city like Delhi needs about 800 scientists. I mean, that is the number we are looking at when our cities in California are battling this. So a team of close to 600 to 800 people is needed in every large city of India. Every 10 million plus city of India needs full time about 800 scientists working on this problem. And to give you a parallel, Mumbai has about 10 scientists working. you know so we're looking at a gap of about 750
Yes.
scientists and technologists to step in and work on a 24 by 7 basis. I mean, you guys are an NDTV 24 by 7. There is
Yeah.
no reason there should not be a team of 800 scientists working
Absolutely.
on this problem 24 by 7. But we don't see that happening. We are not seeing
Right.
it happen even in the wealthiest cities of India. So Delhi and Mumbai need to set that direction and standard, which they are not.
Yeah. So, Mr. Sutaria, thank you so much for joining us. Actually, you paint a quite an optimistic picture, because I was not aware of these parallels and how cities have actually countered a problem like this. So it doesn't seem as insurmountable as it probably seemed
I mean,
2024.
Delhi, I'm sorry to say I don't live in Delhi, but I feel sorry for the chaotic governance it has. It's highly unfortunate that, that the governance has not been able to get along, and the people are paying the price for it. I mean, and that's the most unfortunate, but that is where things are.
Right. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Sutaria. That was Ronak Sutaria, founder of Respirer Living Sciences, joining us and telling us the best ways to deal with Delhi and, of course, Mumbai's air pollution, and also the best ways to counter a problem like this. Thank you so much, Mr. Sutaria, for
Thank you.
joining us.
Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye bye.